Hello, everybody, and welcome to another Agile IT Tech Talk. I'm your host, Sean Spicer. Today, we're going to be continuing our series on our quest for the perfect secure score. In part 3, we're going to go over multi-factor authentication, legacy authentication, and turn on user risk policies. So if you have tuned in to the earlier secure score sessions, we went over setting the status, and we set those as planned last time. So let's go ahead and jump right in here. Just a refresher, or if this is your first time joining, to get to Secure Score, you just roll into your Office 365 admin portal. You'll want to expand your side blade over here, and we're going to go down to Security. Right here on your Security dashboard, you're going to see some mention of Secure Score. Now you can get to Secure Score by clicking here or from the menu item over there. So again, you will see it has been a while since we did our last Tech Talk on this due to the holiday season. And I constantly mention that the Secure Score is not immediately reflective. It takes up to 24 hours to reflect the change in your score. But with the work that we did last time, we managed to go from 15%, well, all the way up to 36%. So we are well on our way. A lot of the stuff that's going to be coming up in the next couple of sessions is going to be a little bit more granular, and you can see as a preview of what we're going to be doing. I'm really excited about Cloud App Security here. It's one of my favorite tools in the Microsoft stack. And I strongly encourage anybody to watch our earlier Tech Talk that talked about using Cloud App Security to identify or to protect data even outside of Microsoft 365. So you can use that to protect data within Google, within Box, within Salesforce. So it really is a great way to manage your data governance and making sure that there is no exfiltration of data and the data that you have stays where it needs to be. So just let's go over the history here, because again, we see that we dropped down to 35%, then 34%. And as I covered last time, we have this in the history, and it will explain why the changes. So November 22nd was our last Tech Talk. We gained that 8% by turning on sign-on risk policy, 1% for creating, for requiring MFA for all users, because 6 fewer users were affected. That was our global admins. 12% gain by completing require MFA for Azure AD privileged roles. And again, that was all covered in the last Tech Talk. Since then, there have been a few changes. Microsoft removed TLS 1.0. Then let's see, they added a new control for configure expiration time for external sharing links. I'll cover that once we adjust that control and why that is important. Minus 2% score change, set up versioning on SharePoint Online documents. That's important for protecting against ransomware. Turn on customer lockbox features. And that's really kind of locking down your data against Microsoft. But you'll see that that's a 0% change because Microsoft trusts themselves. Plus 1 score change because Microsoft added do not allow mailbox delegation. That's a default control. I don't know if you've heard anything about business executive scams or business email scams, where somebody will get into an account, set the account to forward emails and possibly even delete emails, or to set up a delegate where there's a secondary user that's able to read those. It's often used for a style of man-in-the-middle attack, where somebody can see, let's say, an invoice going out to somebody who's buying a home and get in the middle and kind of send a revision around those documents in order to have the funds sent to the wrong account. So these controls are always changing. So being able to see it over time, this is a really good, like 30,000 foot view and a single pane of glass of how Microsoft is staying up to date across new threats and across new best practices. I fully expect that we're going to probably see, well, let's actually go back and look at the Secure Score here. I fully expect that we're going to see a much higher point change in the overview as CMMC comes into place this year. And if you aren't aware, CMMC is the Cybersecurity Maturity Model certification coming from the DoD. It kind of supplants DFARS, ITAR. In the middle of it, it kind of wraps around NIST 800-171, but it's a much more easy to understand framework. as well as being a certification. Now, as it rolls out, it's only going to be required for DoD contractors and subcontractors. However, I do expect it to be one of those things like NIST 171, where industry starts to take hold of the model because it's easier to understand, easier to explain, easier to document against, and easier to provide those proofs, which of course does reduce risk, liability, and will likely be taken into account when you are trying to find out how much cybersecurity liability insurance will cost. And as well, it's just good to have that kind of security hygiene. So we've gone over the history, and let's get down to the issues. So today what we're going to do is we're going to require MFA for all users. If you were in the Tech Talk last week where I went over the Microsoft cybersecurity architecture, you'll remember that I mentioned that a perfect secure score is actually not a good thing. In our final session, we're going to go over what the exceptions are to the rules. So you actually don't want to require MFA for all users. There is one account that you want to have that does not have MFA, and we will set that up, I hope, with the help of Miguel, who has set this up for a number of our clients. And what that account is a break glass account. If something happens, particularly on a large national or natural disaster, something happens where the cell phone towers go out and the primary means of multi-factor authentication are affected, you need a way to get into your admin tenant without MFA in order to disable MFA across your environment during that situation and during that emergency. Break glass accounts are also used when you're dealing with HIPAA data in the event of an emergency where possibly admins are brought in to do triage and need to access patient data while nurses are actually performing the critical functions based upon that large influx of new patients. We do have a blog that talks about the various reasons why break glass accounts are there, and Conrad Aggermont, our CEO, was featured in Computer Security Magazine in a white paper talking about the pros and cons of MFA, as well as artificial intelligence within the use of conditional access. So we're going to go ahead and get started here. We are going to, since this is a demo account, we are going to go ahead and we are going to require MFA for all users. If you look back at the session where we enabled it for privileged accounts, I am logged in as one of those privileged accounts right now, mod administrator. So whenever I sign into this tenant, I have to use Microsoft Authenticator. And that comes back to the next thing that we're going to be doing today, which is enabling the policies to block legacy authentication. So again, it's really easy to get started here. We're going to go ahead and click there, and that's going to bring us into free Azure advice. Oh, I do not need to see free recommendations. Always something new. All right, so we're going to go ahead, and in order to require MFA for all users, we're going to create a new policy. We're going to click on, whoops, we're going to want to give that a friendly name, as they call it in some. Let's see. And yes, that was log analytics that it was completing for me. I don't know why that came up. All right. Cloud apps or actions. We want to go ahead and set it for all cloud apps. Now right here, it warns you, don't lock yourself out. So this was one of the things I did cover in the early Tech Talk. I will not be locked out by this because I do have that modern authentication going. So then we just go ahead and click done. And then we want to grant, and let's see, require multi-factor authentication. Don't want to click anything else. We're going to select. Then we want to set, conditions here. So then for client apps, we want to configure yes. And we only want to have browser, mobile apps, and desktop clients, modern authentication clients, Exchange Active Sync clients, and other clients. We don't need to do this. Apply policy only to supported platforms. Done. All right. And then enable policy. Oh, we need to click done. Then enable policy on. It may give us another warning. Nope, it is creating the policy. And that has been created. Again, we will not see this updated in SecureScore right now. We will see that next week when we come back for part 4. So now we have required MFA for all users. We're going to go ahead and we're going to close, and you'll see we still have the 26 of 32 user accounts that don't use MFA. I want to see if that refreshes now. It may not until, whoops. It may not until the 24 hours. Yep. So this is not going to update, but we will see it tomorrow. But for Tech Talk purposes, you will go ahead and you will see that next week. So we're going to go ahead and close out this section. And again, we set these as planned for this session. Right now, we're going to go ahead and enable policy to block legacy authentication. Now, what this does is this is going to get rid of the ability for people to use like iMail and things like that. This is going to require modern authentication, pardon me, in order to access your environment. And it will say here, protects against password cracking and account breach. Let's go ahead and see the guidance here. So this actually gets down into what the risks are if these policies aren't there. Most of these are pretty straightforward. If you've been working in IT for a while, if you just read the most basic rudimentary information about cybersecurity, you're going to know what these things are. So if some of your users are using legacy clients, they will no longer be able to authenticate into their apps with this policy enabled. This is part of requiring Outlook Mobile. Let's see. All right, now this is going to be in Conditional Access, where once again, it's a new policy. So conditions, client apps, and we want to go ahead, set that again to configure just like last time. And this time, we are going to only select mobile apps, whoops, and desktop clients and other clients. Then we're going to go to grant, whoops, we're going to save. Then we're going to save again. Then we're going to go to grant. And what we want to do is we want to block access on this one. So let's see. And what that's going to do is if they are using those legacy apps, they will no longer be able to sign on. So again, it's set for block access, select. We're going to turn it on. Oops. Need to give it a name. Block legacy auth. And let's see. On and create. Again, we get that little notice, successfully created. We're going to go ahead, go back to our SecureScore. We've already determined that will not open, but what we will get from this is 7.37% bump on that score. So as we go back to SecureScore, as you look here at the score impact, you'll see that as, let's go ahead and view all of these. As time goes on, the impacts become less and less and less. Well, that's down there because it's completed. So at the lowest here, use limited administrative roles. That's just enough access is the term around that. That's only 1%. Meanwhile, the required MFA for all users is 9%. Microsoft is doing a really good job of identifying what has the most impact towards your security posture within your data estate. So we've done that. Now what we want to do is we want to go ahead and turn on user risk policy. So user risk policy detects when a user account might be compromised. This is things like impossible travel. If you've got everything configured correctly, it will start to identify weird actions by the users. So let's say they only ever log in from their desktop between 9 to 5. If they log in from their desktop at 1, it may require MFA. So again, protects against password cracking and account breach, just like last time. And so in here, we can configure the risk remediation policy. Here, we're going to have to set conditions, which are the risk levels under which the policy triggers, and whether access is blocked when the policy is triggered. This can also be set to alert. So right here on, let's go ahead. So it is already on. Why is Users, conditions, user risk. Let's go ahead and set this heavy. Select, done. It's saying that this is already enabled, and I have hit a point where I'm confused in a tech talk. So we're going to go ahead and save. Policy has been successfully saved. All right, let's go for sign-in risk policy here. Enforced. MFA registration, that's going to happen anyway. Well, I believe it's on. I'm going to go ahead and watch to see if that affects the secure score by next week's Tech Talks. And if it doesn't, I will come back and revisit this. So we're zooming right along, still have probably another 5 or 10 minutes. Let's jump up and let's go ahead and, even though we did not plan this, we're going to go ahead and set up. Now, just to go back to what we covered in the previous Tech Talk, you can go ahead and set these different statuses. When we do go ahead and create the break glass account, you can use these in order to have it not affect your secure score. So you'll be able to address why there's that one exception for that one account. But since we're going right into it, we don't need to set the status or the notes or when it's planned. We're going to get right into it. So again, this is in the Office 365 Security and Compliance Center. Let me talk a little bit about what the ATP Safe Links policies are. So Microsoft takes in, I think it's something like 1.5 billion different signals a day of emails coming into Office 365, both in the enterprise level, on the consumer level, like the Office 365 Home, and it identifies phishing attacks. It identifies spoofed pages, and when they're identified, they are then blocked, and you get the red pop-up. We have done tech talks around that and how it works. So Safe Links protect the organization by giving time of click verification of web addresses. And there is a way around it, and there's also another secure score option, which is time of expiration for ATP links. So sometimes what will happen is threat actors will go and send a URL using a link shortener, and then we'll change it. And because it has already been checked as being a good URL through Office 365, then when somebody clicks on it and it takes them to the new URL, they'll get the exploit. By setting time of expiration, what you're able to do is you're able to say, okay, after a certain amount of time, those safe links are no longer safe, and we will have to re-detonate if somebody's going to go ahead and click an unknown link. And we do have a little bit of information about this in a prior tech talk. The way Microsoft manages it is really fascinating. They put out a lot of white papers. If there is a request for that, you can go ahead and put that in the comments or questions, and then I will dig out those URLs and send them out afterwards. But let's go ahead and get this set up. So we're going to set up the ATP Safe Link policies by navigating to Threat Management, Policy, ATP, Safe Links, Save Attachments, Safe Links. All right, there's a new report available. We're going to go ahead and skip that for now. So right now, when you create ATP Safe Link policies, they need to be defined in order for the protection to take place. And you must have Office 365 ATP in order for this to work. So right now, we're going to go ahead and we've got settings. Do not track when users click safe links enabled. Do not let users click through safe links to original URL enabled. Applied to Office 2016 on Windows. Okay, so we want to go ahead and create a strict policy. So when users click a blocked URL, they're redirected to a web page that explains why the URL is blocked. You can set your own URLs. Use safe links in Office 365 apps. We want to go ahead and we want to, we do not want to track when users click safe links, and we do not want to use. We're going to go ahead and we're going to save. All right, default. And this should apply for the entire organization. Now down here with policies that apply to specific recipients, with this you may want to have much stricter policies for, let's say, frontline workers, where you don't want them to be able to visit things like Facebook or Reddit, where they might be exposed to links outside of your organization. There are also situations where you'll want to set up stricter controls and reporting, or lesser controls and reporting for perhaps technical staff or staff that should be able to click through unsafe links. And there are times that happens. I've had it where I have seen marketing platforms get blacklisted as being potential threats, and I do have to click through. Another issue is if you're using software as a service that is hosted outside of the United States in some different nations, particularly around Eastern Europe, India, China, and Southeast Asia, where there are known to be more credible threats. There are sometimes policies set into your firewall or through safe links that prohibit that access. So you'll need to set policies to exclude that if you do have users that are affected by it. Again, it is that constant balance between productivity and security, but in this case, we are going for that perfect secure score. Let's go ahead and clear up the browser a bit here. All right, and we should see that point change later. All right, we're getting close to time here. Enable password hash sync if hybrid. Okay, this will be a good one to show how to manage things that are outside of scope. So it is impossible for me to do this because this is a pure cloud demo account. So I cannot set password hash sync. We have discussed password hashing in the past. If you have been a longtime viewer of Tech Talks, you maybe remember the time that I managed to crash the password spray test within Microsoft Security by trying to upload a hash table. And really, the internet is not meant to upload 3 gig text files. But again, this protects against password cracking. And getting into how, and I'm assuming everybody watching this knows how password hashes work, as well as hashing and salting in order to protect against lesser passwords, if you will, being cracked. So in this case, we still want to get those points. And what we're going to have to do is we're going to edit status and notes, and we're going to go ahead and put risk accepted. We need to put in the notes. Why? This is not a hybrid environment. I'm typing bad today. I'm typing terrible today. It is not a hubris environment. We're going to go ahead and save and close. And we have marked this action as risk accepted, no next steps, no implementation status. All of that guidance goes away. Again, if you want to go back, you can go ahead and change that status to go back to get that guidance. And it will come back with the information on how to set it up. So let's go ahead. I know I'm redoing things here, but risk accepted. We already have the note, save and close. And then we're going to go ahead and close this pane. Set up versioning on SharePoint online document libraries. As we're getting close to the bottom of the hour, I am going to go ahead and mark this for next week. This is something I'd like to talk a little bit more in depth about. This is an incredible protection against ransomware. If you are using SharePoint Online with local folder syncs, if you get hit by ransomware, you can go into SharePoint and roll back to the last known good version across your entire enterprise. We had a great roundtable with our executive team, myself, and Matt Sosman from Microsoft, where we talked about this. One of our earliest videos up when we started first doing Tech Talks on YouTube featured Matt Sosman walking through every stage of defense for the WannaCry malware and how all of the different Microsoft components would work in tandem in order to defend the way that WannaCry will infect an estate. So definitely worth watching. I'll go ahead and put a link to that in the description down below. Just to prep for next week's Tech Talk, we're going to go ahead and, you guessed it, we're going to set it as planned for next Tech Talk. And just to speed things up, because I want to do this for a few different things here, We're going to save and close. And we're going to go ahead and close that. Set up Office 365 ATP Safe Attachment Policies. This is the detonation feature of Office 365 where it will actually open up attachments in order to check that they're safe. Again, we're going to edit. We're going to say planned. We'll go into this next week as well. What I will try to do is I'm hesitant to say it. I will actually have to talk with one of my contacts at Microsoft to make sure I won't get kicked out of the platform. But there is a security environment where we can throw ransomware at. And I want to make sure that we have that environment capable, but I may be able to actually demonstrate what a successful detonation and identification of ransomware looks like. So we're going to go ahead and save that as planned. And I imagine we'll probably do just like we did today, where we go a little bit further than what's planned. Sometimes that does lead me into a little bit of confusion. But for the most part, I do understand a lot of it, and I do some studying beforehand. Automated notifications for no OAuth applications connected to corporate environment. OAuth, we have done a previous tech talk on, and I am not going to plan that for next time. I think this is going to be enough, particularly if I'm going to go through how SharePoint protects against ransomware and how the ATP safe attachment policies work. So for now, that is the end of today's Tech Talk. I hope this has been informative, and I am going to go ahead and cut off the recording. For those of you watching online on YouTube, please give us a like and a follow, and we will see you next week.